as well as conferences and seminars is outstanding. I think other universities and colleges should take some inspiration from them. And I can see many of my scholars also have joined. I hope they would be gaining a lot from the resource person. So I should ask the organizers whether the resource person is here with us or he has still to join.
Yes, ma'am, he is joined. Am I audible, ma'am? Am I audible?
Hello, it's my request to all the academician scholars who have joined this faculty development program. Please sit with a notepad and a pen and take notes. Take notes and keep certain queries in your mind, if at all there are any, just to arouse some very good discussion in this faculty development program. And meanwhile, there are scholars who have raised their hands. So I would like, I would like them to address very briefly if they have any queries, because any moment our resource person will join. And then very earnestly, you have to listen to the resource person. Our resource person is going to speak about the mythical elements in literature, mythology, the mythical elements which are a rich part of our literature. Rubab, I'm asking.
Yes, ma'am. Is there any issue?
No, there aren't any issues. There aren't any issues. So when is the resource person going to join us, Dr. Gurpreet?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Dr. Dinesh has already joined, ma'am.
Okay. I didn't know about it. I'm so sorry. So we'll formally introduce him. Hello, it's a great pleasure for all of us, for all the academician, faculty members, and the scholars which have joined this conference, faculty development program instead, throughout the world on the contemporary trends in English language and literature. Our resource person of the day is Dinesh Kumarji, who has been working as assistant professor of English at Dyal Singh College, Karnal, Haryana, India, for the last 15 years. As a permanent faculty member of Department of English, and MA and MPhil in English literature, Dinesh Kumarji has more than 40 papers to his credit in national as well as international journals in India and abroad. His thrust area of research comprises feminism, Dalit literature, comparative literature, Commonwealth literature, and postmodernism. He has edited 2 books with foreign university professors, namely Natalia Lezebna of Ukraine Polytechnical University, and also edited a book of poetry by Italian poet Jolan Staffler titled Drops of Intensity. He has written other books also on various facets of English literature as a single author, and he's on the editorial board of different national as well as international journals. So we welcome you, sir, and I am totally hopeful that our scholars and academicians are going to learn a lot from your erudition. Over to you, sir.
Uh, Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir. You are audible.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction and formal introduction. And first of all, I'm very grateful and thankful to Dr. Gurpreet Kaur to give me this opportunity to deliver this lecture in this 7-day faculty development program. And as the title of my paper discussion is methodological allusions in Indian writing in English or in English literature, but I will deal two novels particularly, one by Raja Rao Kanthapura and other The Guide by R.K. Narayan, so that we can find out a comparison and contrast in their viewpoint, how they perceive this element of myth in their works and what is the difference. So I will deal with, you can say, these two authors. And as we know that I start with the definition of Diana Wynne Jones, who remarks that if you take myth and folklore and these things that speak in symbols, they can be interpreted in so many ways that although the actual image is clear enough, the interpretation is infinitely blurred, a short of enormous rainbow of every possible color you could imagine. So, keeping this statement in our mind, we can say that in classical Greek, the word myth, it has been derived from the Greek language, Greek word mythos, which signifies any story or plot, whether true or invented, in its central modern significance. However, a myth is one story in a mythology, a system of hereditary stories in ancient origin, which were once believed to be true by a particular cultural group, and which served to uh, explaining in terms of intentions or in terms of actions or of deities or and other supernatural beings, as we find in case of Raja Rao's novel Kanthapura, where we have goddess Kanchamma, and this is the, you can say, interpretation by Raja Rao. So uh, also Claude Levi-Strauss also says that when we are dealing with myth, so everything it becomes possible. It means that because of by inventing some characters, by inventing some situations, or by inventing some, as we have discussed, supernatural beings, we can say, but these things are not real; these are invented. So with myth, everything, you can say, becomes possible. So myth and mythology have been very consistent, integral part of literature since the time immemorial, and an integrative mythology, whether inherited or invented, it is the soul of the literature. And also, many critics they find that literature is conscious mythology. As society develops, its mythical stories become structural principles of storytelling. Its mythical concept, sun gods and like, becomes the habits of metaphoric thoughts. In a fully mature literary tradition, the writer enters into structure of traditional stories and images, as we find. And as we know that Indian literature, it is a very rich reservoir of this element myth as well as mythology. And in Indian mythology, the stories are told as symbols of fundamental truth within societies, having a strong oral tradition. So because the stories are transferred from one generation to another generation, and these stories are generally concerned with some extraordinary things, event, and beings, and they have been one of the richest sources of inspiration for literature, drama, as well as art. And there are several type of myth prevail in the Indian society. Some myth deal with the cosmological event or with the crisis moment in the life cycle of the individuals. Cosmological myth deal with the creation of the universe. Myth in the life cycle of human being primarily concerned with birth, puberty, marriage, baptism, initiation, death, etc. These are the um, elements which are discussed in the cosmological myths. And the myths related to festival occasion are also common in uh, the people of, you can say, India, as we know. Here, it would be very right to quote the maxim popular in Indian society. We are concerned with the idea of Satwar and Art Tyohar, which means there are 7 days in a week, but we celebrate eight festival in the 7 days. So the significant episode of mythology are capable of revealing various shades of meanings and shape the deeper stratification of psyche. India is a continuity, changing, transforming all the time, and the timeless gods and goddesses, their feats, their tales, cling about Indian people in many ways. And it has also been described by some Indian critics also in a very, you can say, apt and right way. And the word mythos constitutes the fables, legends, sagas which rationalize the universe and the world around us. And Indian mythologist Devdutt uh, Patnaik defines mythology in his book Why I Insist on Calling Myself as a Mythologist as a subjective truth of people that is communicated through stories, symbols, and rituals. He adds, unlike fantasy, that is nobody's truth and history, which seeks to be everybody's truth, mythology is somebody's truth. So we find that myth, it provides the main outline and circumference of the verbal universe, which is later occupied by literature as well. And in all cultures, mythology merges, uh, and also you can say it also merges with literature. Myths are the reservoir of new meanings. They acquire new meaning in different contexts. In Indian society, the tragic victim is also glorified as hero or heroine. Myths, when employed by modern writers, acquire a new lease of life. The characters grow out of their mythical worlds and are reborn in the contemporary world and share the modern man's life problem. And this is also the same purpose that is served by the literature which was written in the modern period. And the contemporary literature hence continues to dig into the world of past experiences so as to surmount present complexity. So the present complexity are find their expression into the past experiences. So this is perhaps the reason for the growing interest of the contemporary Indian writers towards this element of myth or mythology. So this use of myth, it is the potential strategy to represent reality. Sometimes it is serious, sometimes it is philosophical, as we find in case of Raja Rao's fiction, Kanthapura, The Serpent and the Rope, and sometimes it is comic and also farcical, as we find in case of R.K. Narayan also, where the reality itself gets a mythic dimension. The works of R.K. Narayan and Raja Rao have been examined to discuss the reinterpretation and also to find a revisioning of mythology through their characters, plots, as well as narrative techniques. Raja Rao's works reflect Indian life and culture in all its rich complexity. As we find the criticism of, we can say, one critic, C.D. Narasimha Rao, who noted mythological backdrop in his novels, in the novels of Raja Rao. A.S. Rao says, and he opines the similar thought for Kanthapura in this, in the you can say, following lines. He says, I quote, the novelist uses mythical motives to interpret the immediate reality in terms of eternally recurring experiences. He combines the secular and spiritual forces in his portrayal of Indian struggle for freedom. Raja Rao has used the mythology and folklore as media to present his thought and feeling precisely to the readers. And mythology and folklore is morphed into the structural mode of the novel. And if we find the whole of the Indian freedom struggle, then we find how it is fabricated into the threads of mythology and folklore, uh, as we find in the novels of Raja Rao as well as R.K. Narayan. And Rao has interwoven the conventional mythology with the contemporary reality. The recurrent reference to myth adds new dimension to the struggle for freedom, for exaggeration of reality by myth is the necessary way of achieving the eternity in space. So Raja Rao has recaptured the magnificent mythical imagination of Indian antiquity in his novels. So his novel Kantapura follows the primeval order of Varnashra as stated in Vedas. There are quarters of different caste in Kantapura. If we go through the novel, the town is diversified. It is divided into Brahman quarters, Potter quarter, Priha, Shudra quarters, and we may also find some mythical allusions which are stated in Bhagavad Gita as well. And uh, we find in Bhagavad Gita that the activity of the Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra are clearly divided according to their quality born of their own nature. And the Shudra stood at the lowest level in this Vedic hierarchy, and Brahmins were at the topmost place. And the Brahmins were not supposed to intermingle with the Shudra Murti, a Brahman when does so, when he goes contrary to the practices of the society, and when he mixes with the Pariha people. His mother dies of the fear of being excommunicated. Casteism prevails in the small town of Kantapura, and the Vedic rules were being followed there strongly. So Gandhi has been depicted as one of the, you can say, mythological figure in the novels, not only in Raja Rao, but also in R.K. Narayan's fiction. And also we find in case of Babani Bhattacharya, as we find that Gandhi's thoughts are the creative force in Indo-Anglian novelist. And Mulk Raj Anand is also the champion of Gandhian humanism, as we find in the novel Bakha, sorry, and the novel Untouchable, where Bakha is the protagonist. And we have also we also come across the quest for spiritual regeneration through Gandhian thoughts in Raja Rao in his works, and also find the underlying pattern of Gandhian thought in R.K. Narayan's novel, where the freedom movement it has been closely connected with Mahatma Gandhi's, you can say, the national figure he has been presented, and also in Bhavani Bhattacharya, how the novelist deals with the Gandhian as you can say force of social realism. So Gandhi is a mythological character in the novel, and he has been positioned on the pedestal of God, where he is compared with a great god of Hindu mythology, Krishna. You remember how Krishna, when he was, but you can say, a small, you can say, child of 4 years, he began to fight against the demons and had killed the serpent Kali. And so too our, you can say, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi began to fight against the enemies of the country. More and more people they followed him in his mission, and as they did, you can say, Krishna, the flute player, and so he goes from village to village to slay the serpent of the foreign rule. So this is the way of Indians, that they preserve their memories about legend and mythology in a story form. Our symbols of mythology are varied and many. Most probably Gandhi too will someday pass into a legend of mythological nature. Indians will enlarge him to an idealistic size where he will worshipped as an idol, a deity. So Gandhian Murthy got immersed deeply into the primordial radiance of his inner self, how he experiences a holy version of Mahatma, after which he felt like an ethereal, you can say, being, and remembers the mythological tale of Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu, where Prahlad is thrown down the mountain, drowned into the sea, and given poison to be killed. But every time Hari and Vishnu saved him, as it may be illustrated in the following passage also. I quote, and he remembered the child Prahlad, who had said Hari was everywhere. And he said to himself, I shall see Hari too. And that very evening, he said to his mother, Mother, now you can throw me down to the mountain. And she asked, Why, my son? And he answered, why, mother? Because Hari will fly down and hold me in his arm as I roll down the mountains. And if you send elephant to kill me, the elephant will stand by and say, so this is Hari's child, and they lift me with their trunk and sit me on their, you can say, back and throw a garland round my neck, and the poison you will give me in the cup of death will become water of flower for mother. I have seen Hari. I unquote. So here we find how the mythological tale of Prahlad, the reader can easily find out the analogy of Prahlad and Murthy and Hari and Gandhi. So at another place, this mythological analogy is also taken as a reference. And we can notice in the following lines, I quote, and then Murthy says, Shinu. Shinu is a character in Kanthapura. Shinu Shinu is our fifth member. And Rangagowda says every Ram needs an Arjuna, and he is your fire, tailed Hanuman. And they all laugh. And so Murthy and Rangagowda and Rangamma and Rachna and Sinu, they become the Congress Panchayat Committee of Kanthapura. So how they join this Congress Panchayat Committee in Kanthapura? Many, because this novelty is the microcosm of the whole country, happening in the whole country, it was happening in Kanthapura. So the phrase fire-tailed Hanuman, it relates to the whole story of Hanuman when he fired Ravan's Lanka and his tail. And here, with his, you can say, one-line analogy, when the author has entitled Shinu as the great warrior of Murthy's Sena, as Hanuman was the chief warrior of Vanar Sena in the war of Ramayana. So how the story of, you can say, Ramayana, it is interlinked with the story that we find in the characters they have. They find their analogy with the characters in Kanthapura. So one Swamiji, who is wearing the robes of saint, came forward and addressed the people. His thoughts were all in favor of British and against Gandhi. And he says, I quote, all this is very good, but if the white man shall leave us tomorrow, it will not be Ram Rajya. So Ram Rajya, we will have but the rule of the 10-headed Ravana. What did we have? Pray before the British came. Disorder, corruption, and egoism. Disorder, corruption, and egoism. I say, and the British came, and they came to protect us, our bones and our dharmas. I say dharma, and I mean it. For hath not the Lord said in the Gita, whensoever there is ignorance and corruption, I come. For I say Krishna and the defender of dharma, and the British came to protect our dharma. So this is the version given by, you can say, the Swamiji in order to uh, how he is advocating the presence of the British people, favoring the British people. The Swamiji argued with the people by taking recourse to mythology of Ravana and the words from the Gita. as he knew the people were also, you can say, much akin, much close to divine scripture and their characters and verses as to their neighbors and relatives. One more verse from Gita appears in the following lines, as when we find, I quote, "No, sister, that is not difficult. Does not the Gita say? The sword can split asunder the body, but never the soul. And if we say, we shall not move a hair, we shall not move a hair." Kanthapura, it is, you can say, the reference from Kanthapura. So, this is also, you can say, written in Bhagavad Gita. When we go through the, you can say, the so the soul is in the soul cannot be killed. The soul is incombustible, insoluble, as well as unwitherable. So the soul is eternal, all pervasive, and also unmodificable and immovable and primordial. So the words from Gita have also been contextualized in the language of the common people of the Kanthapura. And when they are talking about the episode from Ramayana and Mahabharata, as well as, you can say, some verses from the holy scriptures. So here we find, you can say, the background of these mythical stories, which are told by the people of Kanthapura. And we also find that people of Kanthapura, they invoke the three-eyed god to protect them from every danger. As they sing the song, the chorus, we lighted the sacred flame, and our mouth watered, we clapped our hands, and we sang. Shiva Shiva of Meru Mount, Shiva Shiva of Ganga Head, Shiva Shiva of Crescent Moon, Shiva Shiva of crematorium dance, and Shiva Shiva of unillusioned heart, Shiva Shiva. So this is what we find. So this analogy, it is related to the freedom struggle and the you can say everlasting war of Ramayana. That battle was also the battle of good and evil, in which the evil was defeated by the gods, and Mahatma Gandhi and Ram, they were the main exponent of these eternal wars. Bharat Mata compared to Sita in the novel, who has been abducted by Ravana, and Ravana has been compared to red men, the British people. So it may be seen in the following lines, as we find, I quote, "He will bring us Savraj, the Mahatma, and we shall be happy. And Rama will come back from exile, and Sita will be with him. For Ravana will be slain and Sita freed, and he will come back with Sita on his right in a chariot on of the air, and brother Bharat will go to meet them with the worshipped sandal of the master on his head, and as they enter Ayodhya, there will be the rain of flowers. Unquote. So it will not be exaggeration to say that the whole novel, it is imbued with mythological elements, and also Raja Rao also penetrates the heart of the readers and also the inner core of the human psyche. And mythology retains the root of, you can say, any culture, and the culture gets flourished by taking recourse to mythology. So here we find that the mythological exploration of the by the novelist are serving two purposes. The first is it it is used as a propaganda, the freedom struggle to every person of town, and they become the part of it. And second, mythology laid the foundation and prepared a solid background on which the whole novel is constructed. So this is what we find in the novel. And the mythological color hue had been lent to the novel in the foreword, as it has been addressed by Raja Rao. He says Rama might have rested under his peepal tree. Sita might have dried her clothes after her bath on her Yellowstone, and or the Mahatma himself on one of his many pilgrimages through the country might have slept in this hut, the low one by the village gate. So one such story from the contemporary annals of my village I have tried to tell. So this is in the forward of Kanthapura. So Uh, the Sthal Puran, the local history of the place, it is also portrayed by the novelist in such a manner that it symbolizes the history of the, you can say, whole nation at that time. So Gandhi is also mythologized, and he has been set on the pedestal of God. And one day he will also become the part of mythology. Many tales about his birth, non-violent feats, will also be narrated by, you can say, people, and he will be taken as some mythological heroes who were endowed with the extraordinary powers of swaying the masses. Gandhi, like Krishna, is preaching the principle and doctrine of Bhagavad Gita to Murthy, who is parallel to Parth or Arjun. Kanthapura is like mini Bhagavad Gita, we can say, and where all the people they are taught to be, can say, detached from the worldly pleasures and also to perform tasks without thinking about its fruitfulness. It means the idea of nishkam karma. We should not expect any kind of fruit in return of our labor, which is the message. So Bhagavad Gita is also Indian text with its root in Rig Veda or Upanishad, which inform the life of Indian today as it did in the past. Shankar and Gandhi, Radhakrishnan and Ramanujan. Many have commented on and contextualized it in their writing to explain its relevance to everyday life. So Raja Rao writing, whether it is Serpent and the Rope or I can say Kantapura, we find that these are totally absorbed in the preaching of Gita and also can say Indian deep knowledge from the Vedas and Purans. So this is what we find that the use of the mythical figure of Krishna further demonstrate that myth enables a social translation within a specific Indian context, which is not outside change in the Kantapura, but it lies within within this text. So Rao's use of mythology in his writing can be read as an attempt to connect it with the ancient thought, ancient though still living cultural tradition of India. So Gandhi, the myth of Gandhi, Kanchamma myth, and these myths have been uh, can say used by the novelist in a very in the structure of the novel in order to propagate the belief of the villagers in the rituals which the people of village they were following. So there is also a parallelism between river Ganga as well as goddess Kanchamma. At the very outset of the novel we find the narrator of the story Achakka, who tells about the vicinity of Kantapura that was afflicted by a Malech, a demon, who used to devour young sons as his food and took young women as his wives. So the sage Tripura brought goddess Kanchamma on the land of Kantapura after a long penance. And like Bhagirath, who brought Ganga on the earth for the redemption of the ancestor. So the earth of Kantapura, it got sanctified after the emergence of goddess Kanchamma as river Ganga purified the land of Bharat Varsh. So she is the blood and the soul of Kantapura because every ritual, every can say tradition which the villagers they are following, it is started with the worship of the goddess Kanchamma, which is the supreme village deity. So there are some lesser deities also who takes care of various problem of the village, and Ankamma takes care of some diseases, and Mariamma takes care of smallpox and other diseases, including those of the cattle. And it has mythical parallel with the legend of various devas in India. Ganga is the supreme deity, while Yamuna, Saraswati, Narmada, Godavari are lesser deities who have been uh, polluting the stage of humanity with the rest of time. And in this context, again, I also finds out his observation when he says, I quote, nevertheless, the legend of Kanchamma is mythic. Immediately recall passages from those it जो पेपर आया है उसमें से एक एक क्वेश्चन 16 के अकॉर्डिंग कर लो पता नहीं किसके Matra and Agni Puran, that of the river Godavari in the
All are
Brahmaputra and
just excuse me. All are requested to keep their mics off, please.
Brahmaputra is connected with Krishna and Radha in various places of and also Bhagavad Puran. So this is what M.K. Naik as a critic. So in the novel project, Vedas, myth, Puran, a foundation of whole fictional mention is erected. And it also provides some commentary to his writing, and this is the reason why they have made Raja famous on international ground. So the important invented stuff with the जो Raja Rao in the following extract by M.K. Naik, and he this extract in Illustrated Weekly of India. And it is through Shakespeare, through Saint Thomas Aquinas or Nietzsche. So you come back to the Upanishad and Vedanta, realizing that wheresoever you go, you always return to Himalaya. And whatever the rivers that flow, the water are of the Gangotri. So we find, you can say, this observation of M.K. Naik again. So we find that the eruption and evolution of the village Kantapura, it is also mythical and falls under the category of cosmogenic myth, which describes the birth, evolution, destruction, and rebirth of the village to the age-old myth and creation and destruction. So Kantapura, it is a Puranic tale where we find a semblance between the eternal war of Devas and Asuras and Satyagrahi as well and Redmen. Gandhi is the avatar of God who landed on, you can say, earth to rescue Bharat Mata. Bharat Mata has been captured from the prison house of Ravana, Ravan, red man, British people. By comparing this mortal war of the legendary war of Ramayana, Raja Rao has very beautifully and very minutely integrates the mythical and contemporary to elevate the contemporary to the level of myth. So this is what we find, I can say, in this novel. Now we take the novel written by R.K. Narayan, where we have uh, also the use of mythical elements. And the word of, we can say, mythical Indian tradition, it is not only allured by Raja Rao, but also R.K. Narayan too, who remained charmed throughout his writing career towards them. Narayan inherited this love for Hindu mythology and legends from his grandmother. When his grandmother used to narrate some stories in his childhood, he got, we can say, a fascination for Hindu mythology from there. Beside his religious grandmother, his house being is the vicinity of various temples. He imbibed religious values at home. Narayan is also no original thinker, but he has no independent philosophy as well to propagate his you can say ideas in his works. But he largely subscribes to the Hindu ideals enshrined in the ancient Hindu scriptures. Narayan says in his novel, the, you can say, Pentom Malgudi, where he says, our epics undoubtedly are the veritable storehouse of wisdom and spirituality. They contain messages which are of eternal value and applicable to all times and climes, irrespective of age, race, sex, and so on. India has a lesson to teach to the rest of the world. I unquote. So, in the novel, The Guide, we start with this novel, how Narayan uses mythical elements. So, in the novel, The Guide, which was awarded Sahitya Academy Award and which was also dubbed into Hindi film also. So we may observe the teaching of Bhagavad Gita again. So which is the compendium of the sublime thoughts. It instructs the man about yoga, devotion, Vedanta, and action. Every religion of the world is, however, convinced that to achieve the ultimate aim of the life is to master the senses. We have five senses, and to master the senses, that is the main is the aim of, we can say, everyone's life. Purification of character through acquiring superior morality and eventually leading to selflessness, and which is the major requirement if we are talking about the idea of salvation. Then this is the major requirement that we should move from self to selflessness and also acquire superior morality, which will help us to acquire this self. So the emancipation of soul can be attained according to Chakra by knowing the ultimate truth, that is Brahma. And Brahma can be known to the people who can control their mind and senses. So this is what we find Bhagavad Gita also. One who works in devotion, who are who who is a pure soul and who control his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. So though always working, such a man is never entangled. And Raja Rao, the guide, is also the person who first got entangled in the worldly pleasures, sensual desires, and how there is a transformation, or we should say moral transformation is there in the character of Raju, who becomes a saint by controlling his desire and sense. So how this journey finds, you can say, a big comparison with the Saint Valmiki who wrote Ramayana, and because in his earlier life he was a robber and he turned to be a great sage in later on, and what we find that Valmiki, the writer of Ramayana, with the help of myth, Ramayana was linked to, you can say, the present with the similar mythical parallels, thereby achieved universality and kept alive the tradition. So, as in the novel, the titles associating them with the mythology. And in the novel, the guide Raju depicts the idols, associating them with the mythology, as we find in the can say quotes. I quote, it must be the source of Saryu mentioned in the mythological stories of goddess Parvati, dipping into the fire. The carving on the one of the pillars of the shrine actually shows the goddess plunging into the fire, water arising from the spot. Unquote. Raju, who had very knowledge of Hindu mythology, and he also acquired, you can say, this knowledge from his mother in the forms of bedtime stories, as Arkanarayan did. So the Bhagavad Gita, it is the work of imperishable significance, and it gives a very deep insight into those things which are valid for all times and for all religious lives. So the novel, the guide, Raju, he refers to Bhagavad Gita many times while uh, discoursing on Bhagavad Gita to his audience to the other evening. He says, I quote, Lord Krishna says here, he entered into a semi-philosophical discourse on the set of rambling themes, starting with the eating of good food and going on to the absolute truth in God's goodness, unquote. The temple, the village, the town of Malgudi, as Kantapura, it is also an imaginary South Indian village. So Malgudi is also an imaginary South Indian village. And river Sayud, these things have been used by the novelist as recurring symbols in the knowledge of Canara. Find the most important symbol is the river Saryu, the pride of Malgudi, and undoubtedly an inseparable part of this landscape, which is delineated by R.K. Narayan. The temple is not just a ruined temple in the novel, but it is a perpetual symbol of religious culture, also the symbol of creativity, also the symbol of light, and we have also the reference of banyan tree, fire, milk, which have been dealt with symbolic dimensions by the novelist. So the life journey of Raju, the guide, may also be illustrated from the verse of Bhagavad Gita, and even if we can say one commits the most, you can say the heinous, you can say crime or action as is it is done by Raju, if he is engaged in devotional services, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. So this is written in Bhagavad Gita, and Raju also became a saint. But in the early phase of sainthood, he could not understand the meaning of how he should behave like a true sannyasi. It was not known to him. But it was in the later phase of his life where he devoted himself entirely for the humanity, and he entirely surrendered himself for the causes of welfare of society, and there he got redempted, redemption. We should say redemption he got in his life uh, from his sins, as Valmiki did in his life, because he was also a robber in the early phase of, you can say, his life. Later on, he turned and he wrote Ramayana. Myth and legend of Ramayana and Mahabharata are well assimilated in the psyche of Indian people. They reveal that for the women, her husband is everything, and to obey him, this is the param dharam of, we can say, the can say wife. And these epic define an ideal father, ideal mother, an ideal brother and sister. So the characters of these mythological episodes present the highest standard of any relationship, as we find in other novels by R.K. Narayan as well. So in the guide, we may notice this in the relationship of Marco and Rosie. Rosie, first, in the fits of passion, she leaves because she feels an attraction towards Raju, and she leaves her husband for the sake of her aspiration. And moreover, she also wants to fulfill her desires. As a good dancer, she wants to establish herself. And so she leaves her husband for the sake of her aspiration, but later on, she longs to die at her husband's doorstep. She realizes the total submission and devotion to the husband, that is the only way for the women to attain peace. So this is the only religion for the women to follow, as is depicted through Rosie. So the chief character in the novel, Raju, Rosie, Marco, they are also the product of the Hindu culture, and how they are, you can say, there you can say this story, it becomes very important for the coming generation also to preach some morality. And Raju, who can also be compared to the mythological character of Bhagirath, who brought Ganga down to the earth from the heavens, as Raju brought rain after a long fast. And when he is, I can say, when the people of the village they ask, and it all happens in a mythological way. And as in the long, you can say, ascetic, you can say tapasya, that the sage and the seer they reach towards, you can say, unreached. They reach towards the unreached through their tapasya or meditation. It explored the unexplored vistas of their inner self and spiritual world. Raju also explored himself and reached at the crest of, we can say, his existence, highest point. Thus, many episodes from Ramayana and Mahabharata can be illustrated in Narayan's novel. Rosie asked Raju to get Pandit to read Ramayana and Mahabharata for her in these lines. I quote, I shall also want him to read for me episode from Ramayana and Mahabharata because they are a treasure house, and we can pick up so many ideas and new compositions from them. So these lines may truly be applicable to Narayan also, who took many ideas, plot, characters, stories, and also from these you can say great reservoir of mythology, Indian mythology we should say, and made it an inseparable part of his fictional works. So we may surely find one or two characters in his novel who are well versed in scriptures like Ramayana and Mahabharata, Nataraj and Shastri, for example, in The Man Eater of Malgudi, Swami in A Tiger of Malgudi, and Raju's mother in The Guide are the example of, we can say, this idea. Raju's mother in The Guide reads scripture daily and has a sound knowledge of Indian mythology. And uh, as the novelist says, I quote, she quoted numerous mythological stories of Savitri, Sita, and all the well known heroines. Apparently, it was a general talk. And also, but my mother motives were, you can say, naively clear. So, unquote. So, she also narrated many, I can say, references relevant to the particular incident. I quote, she narrated an incident about the trouble created by my father's unreasonable, obstinate attitude in some family matters and how she met it. After a few days, she began to allude to the problems of husband and wife whenever she spoke to Rosie and filled the time with these, you can say, stories about 2000, about husband, good husband, mad husband, reasonable husband, unreasonable ones, savage one, and slightly deranged ones, moody ones, and so on. And but it was always the wife by her, you can say, uh, doggedness, or you can say perseverance or patience that brought him round. Unquote. Raju's mother is the, you can say, counterpart of Achakka in, you can say, Kantapura. She is, you can say, totally, you can say, uh, uh, a foil or opposite. And the snake dance of Rosie is also presented in mythological way, where the writer has named the mythological gods in relation to the movement of the snake. I quote, light changed, she gradually sank to the floor, the music became slower and slower, the the refrain urged the snake to dance. The snake that resided on the locks of Shiva himself on the wrist of his spouse Parvati and in the ever radiant home of gods in can say Kailash. So Kailash Parvat. So this was a song that elevated the serpent and brought out its mystic quality, and the rhythm was, you can say, hypnotic. Unquote. Serpent stand for venom and deception. Here, the novelist endeavors to show that the venomous or you can say deceptive nature of Rosie with the help of the symbol of serpent. So, as it is also commented by some of the critics like A.K. Jha and the book Arkan Myth and Archetype in his novel, where he says, I quote, Narayan approach to such gods and goddesses is not that often moralist, but they form an indispensable part of his story. As indispensable as his omnipresent character like Gafur, talkative man Raman, and painter of sign, etc. Such elements of, offer help to author in strengthening his ironic vision, which is the soul of his writing. Unquote. The whole novel is propounding the teaching of Bhagavad Gita as mentioned in its chapter number 3, and the name of the chapter is Karma Yoga. So Lord Krishna here says that there are two classes of men who realize the self. Some are inclined to understand him by empirical philosophical speculation, and other are inclined to know him by devotional work. In verse 6 and verse 7 of chapter 3, these two types of people are explained by this book. So we find that Raju's life, it is an example of both such type of, you can say, person before adopting sainthood, and in the earlier phase of sainthood too. He was a hypocrite. He displayed himself a true ascetic, but actually he was not. And it was in the later or decisive moment of his life when he regulated all his senses and also united himself with the Supreme Soul, which is known as Brahma. The eventual yielding unto the God redeemed him from all of the sin, and the novel is based on unique feature of Indian philosophical system, which is prescribed in Bhagavad Gita as well, and that every sinner gets salvation. So the only condition is true faith in God and also the mysterious ways of God. Valmiki, also Angulimika or Kalidas, Guru Ravidas, all were pardoned as they had unwavering, you can say, unswerving faith in, you can say, in God, or can say uh, everlasting faith. The end of the novel, the guide, it is the vindication of Indian ritual, mysticism, spiritualism, which are the various manifestation of the Indian philosophy. So Narayan has inclined towards the mythology and Vedantic philosophy from his early novels, and as he proceeded from the earlier novel to the later novel, he matured as a artist, as an artist, and developed a very profound moral vision. In the novel, The Manager of Malgudi, he has shown the mythological tussle between good and evil, Deva, Asuras, and when one reads the novel, one remembers the eternal war of Devasur Sangram, where Devas and Malets churned the great milky ocean, and also with the help of, we can say, Shir Sagar, with the help of the snake Vasuki and acquired nectar and the divine water. In every age, there has been tussle between good and evil. At present, also there is also the conflict between good and evil, and as it was in the past, as it was in the time of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So, in the age of Rama, the epitome of good, can say goodness, he killed the 10-headed Ravana. In the age of Krishna, Krishna killed Kans. And in Mahabharata, we find how, which also conveys sublime can say thoughts of Gita to the world. So here in the Mandate of Malgudi, Vasu is depicted as a taxidermist or the embodiment of evil qualities. Natraj presented as a noble soul. Vasu has all the wickedness of Rakshasa. Natraj has, can say, because Natraj he observes the preaching of the scriptures. The entire novel is woven on the mythological plane of war between good and evil, in which good wins, or we should call in Shakespearean terms the idea of poetic justice. That is, that happens. So, in this novel, the myth of Bhasmasur is, you can say, is shown by the novelist through the entire novel. Shastri, the assistant of Natraj, he calls Vasu as a Rakshas. At this, Natraj refers to the Puranic legend of Bhasmasur, and this Rakshas gained through his, he can say, supreme human power, Shiva boon. Shiv gave him the boon that whomever he touched on the head would be reduced to ashes. So, armed with this, he wished to test the boon on Shiva himself. So, that the god had to flee in panic to Vishnu for help. Vishnu garbed, you can say, himself in the form of Mohini, a beautiful lady, and appeared before Bhasmasur, being crazy in the, I can say, seductive beauty, and Bhasmasur fell madly in her love and started following her. So this is the story. Mohini promised to yield to the Rakshas on the condition of dancing with her. Thereupon Mohini started a dance and put her hand on her head. The Rakshasa did the same and at once burned himself to ashes. So this is the, you can say, mythical story that we find in that. So with that, I come to the end of lecture is also, can say, very long, but I cannot can say, do it for a long time. So We find that how in Indian, you can say, literature, which is a rich reservoir of myth and mythology, the stories are, you can say, transformed from generation to generation, and we also come to know. But myth, as we know that it is a prominent term in literary analysis. A large group of writers, myth critics, we should say, including, if we go through the, we can say, foreign authors, then among the myth critics we find Robert Graves, Francis Ferguson, and Maud Bodwin, and Richard Chase, and he was, you can say, the most influential. North of Fire view the genre and individual plot pattern of many works of literature, including what on the surface are highly sophisticated and realistic works, as recurrences of basic mythic formulas. North of Fire puts it as, I quote, the typical form of myth become the convention and genre of literature. According to Fire's theory, there are four main narrative genres. And what are these four main narrative genres? Comedy is there, romance is there, tragedy, and irony that are associated with the seasonal cycle of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So, a reader needs to alert to the confusing, you can say, variety of application of the term myth. In contemporary criticism, in addition to those already described, its uses range all the way from signifying any widely held fallacy, or we call the myth of the progress, the American success myth, as we find in case of um, uh, the play by, you can say, I forgot the name of that play, and the myth of, you can say, American Dream, which was also popular, and we also find that some, we can say, French structuralists also, we can say, they departed from the traditional view and just described and treat the myth within each culture as signifying system whose true meanings are unknown to their proponents. He analyzes the Lewis Strauss. He analyzes the myth of a particular culture as composed of signs which are to be identified and interpreted on the model of the linguistic theory. And so this is a 20th century interpretation that we find in the critics, in the, you can say, criticism of these writers of this term myth. And but overall, we find that myth, it signifies, you can say, any story, plot, whether true or invented. And the central modern significance, however, a myth is, you can say, one story in a mythology, a system of hereditary stories of ancient origin, which were once believed to be true by a particular cultural group. And these stories are, you can say, transferred to the next generations, and which serve to explain in terms of intention and action of deities, or you can say supernatural beings, as we talked in the beginning of our lecture. So we find that some, we can say, anthropologists, they disagree as to whether rituals generated myths or myths generated rituals. So if the protagonist is a human being rather than a supernatural being, then the traditional story is usually not called as a myth, but it is called as a legend. And if the hereditary story concerns supernatural beings who are not gods, and the story is not part of systematic mythology, then it is classified as folktale. Because these terms are, you can say, very much, you can say, we can differentiate these terms, myth, legend, and folk tales, on the basis of, you can say, the description of the degrees, as we find, can say. So that was all about the lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dinesh. In fact, it was a wonderful lecture. So, the house is open to the question very quickly because we have another resource person waiting for us. By the time the scholars are ready with the questions, I have one question, Dr. Dinesh. I hope I am very clearly audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yes, thank you. My question is, do the myths not put too much of pressure on the ordinary heroes, heroes of everyday life? And at the same time, do the myths not encourage or motivate the common people to, take up some large initiatives? I hope my question has been clear.
Yes, yes. The first question is related to the first part is that we feel pressure when we are, you
Yes,
can say,
pressure,
reading
mythological hero,
the
if an
mythological heroes.
average boy, he compares himself with Lord Rama, there is lot of pressure on him to act in
Yes,
that,
yes. But
supernatural manner. And at the same time, that very average man or woman or child or father, whatever may be the personality, also picks up so much of encouragement and motivation from these mythological characters. So I would like to know about it, and I would also request the scholars to be very quick with their questions. Thank you, Dr. Dinesh.
so the first
Hello,
question
ma'am.
is the first question related to how we feel, you can say, pressure. The ordinary human being, they feel pressure when we are going through some mythological stories. But but at that time we should, you can say, take care of this thing that these mythical stories are can be real, or you can say not real, invented, and we are living in, you can say, a real world. And at that time we should also take care of the idea of as Aristotle has also said, the idea of imitation, and how it leads to, you can say, the tragedy of the human beings, and knowing our potentials. And when we compare, because the characters in, you can say, mythical stories, they are endowed with some, you can say, superhuman powers, which the ordinary human beings are not. So that, you can say, leads to, but in the fits of passion we should not we should be encouraged, we should be inspired, but we can say we should not cross, you can say, those limits that by imitating their actions, which are heroic actions, we should say, and that we the real people, you can say, they should meet, you can say, the tragedy, because in the stories the character can be, you can say, invented or real. This is, you can say, the fact about the myth and mythological stories. But in real life things are, you can say, different. So it should be, you can say, we when we are reading a mythical story about the gods and goddesses, how with the character with superhuman power, at once, you can say, we are also feeling a passion to do, you can say, the same heroic action. But we should also, you can say, take care of, you can say, because if literature, if we are inspired and we are motivated by, you can say, their actions, but at the same time we should also, you can say, take care of other, you can say, literary critics who propounded what will happen when we are imitating the actions of, you can say, others.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's
Hello.
wonderfully good. That's
Sir, good
wonderfully
afternoon,
very
sir.
well answered.
Sure.
Ma'am.
We should move to another questions. Yes, Samanaik, you have a question?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Hello.
Yes.
Meanwhile, I'll request the rest of the participants to put their mics off. Even I'm putting my mic off.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
let's attend to his question. Yes.
Yes. Sir, I really inspire you for our fiction, sir. But the Malgudi main theme, sir, what is the main theme?
Malgudi.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Malgudi is an imaginary, you can say, South Indian village. But
Yes.
this village exists in reality or not, it is also, you can say, we are reading it only in the novels of R.K. Narayan.
Yes,
But
sir.
but the customs and the traditions as we I already can say discussed when I started Narayan and discussing. So that he got, you can say, the idea of the myth and you can say mythological story when these stories were narrated to him by, you can say, his mother. And also you can say if we go through the character of Raju in the guide as well, he also, you can say, got the idea of these mythical stories from his mother. So the central theme of what we should we should, you can say, go by the vision of the novelist, that through a very comic vision he has presented the, you can say, reality, and also the mythical element, and also you can say the mythological figures play an important role in the novels of R.K. Narayan. And there is, you can say, slight difference between R.K. Narayan and Raja Rao when they are dealing with these elements, myth and mythological, you can say, figures in their novels.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. Understood, sir.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
My name is Neha, sir. I am a research scholar, and
Okay.
this session was very informative for us. I just want to ask a question that you have mentioned two novels that by R.K. Narayanan, The Guide, and Kantapura. So I
Yes.
want to ask, sir, is Hai Vandana is also related to mythological element in English literature?
Yes.
Hai Vandana by Girish Karnad.
Yes, yes.
Girish
I
Karnad.
have
Girish
a
Karnad.
scholar who is working on this very drama of Garish Karnad. So, Asif, I hope you are here. Please, if you have something to add on to, first let's see how the question is answered by Professor Dr. Dinesh Kumarji, and give it a patient hearing, all of you. Yeah, exactly.
And sir, one more question. Apart from this, Leda and Swan by W.B. East, is it regarded as a mythological work from
Yes.
English literature?
So even T.S. Eliot, you can say, poem The Wasteland, it is also imbued with the, you can say,
Yes, sir.
myth
Yes, sir.
and
Because
mm,
I have written right now T.S. Eliot also.
and even you will, if you go through Eugene O'Neill's, you can say,
Hmm.
Morning Become Electra, you will find also, you can say, some references of, you can say, myth and mythological stories in these works.
Yes, sir.
Mm. So W.B. Yeats, like his, you can say, admired predecessors, William Blake. You are
Hmm.
familiar with the name of William Blake. He
Hmm.
he undertook to construct his own systematic mythology, which is expounded in his you can say book, which was written in 1926. Name of the book was A Vision. And
Yes, sir.
also he has also embodied or included a number of remarkable, you can say, lyrical poems where we find, you can say, myth and the role of mythological characters, as we find in The Second Coming or the Byzantium. These are the poems that if we go through, we can say.
But sir,
Request the scholars to be very brief. We already are running short of time. We have to begin the next section. So, Neha, I hope your question is answered. You have a lot of details about the myths. Actually, it is a very vast field.
Yes, yes.
yes,
So, Asif, if you would like to add something, or Basharat, before we move forward to the next session.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah, good afternoon, Basharat. Please be very brief
Good
with your
afternoon, sir.
question. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Good
S-
afternoon.
Ma'am, my question to sir is when it comes to the consumption of meat, it has closely association with the psychological domain of human life.
Mhm.
Jung believes that it's the product of collective consciousness. My question to sir is how this notion, I mean, the notion of collective consciousness is understood in Indian literature. First question. And second question is, sir talked about, discussed about the concept of evil. Is
Evil.
not this evil? Is not this evil? Is not this evil as the result of Maya in Indian tradition? I mean, religious tradition or literary tradition.
Yes, yes, yes. if we go through, you can say the novel Kanthapura, we will find that Murthy, being a Brahman, he is away from, you can say, materialism, and that's why he has a peace of mind and he's focusing on his aim and the mission, because he's fighting for, you can say, the independence of India. And
Yes.
if we go through the guide, right from the beginning, Raju, he's, you can say, he's a, you can say, railway guide, and uh, but when he meets Roji, all of a sudden, a beautiful girl, and he is
Mm.
attracted towards her, and when he finds potential, he
Yeah.
finds some that she has some potential that she can emerge as a good, you can say, dancer, and
Mm.
now this idea, keeping this idea in his mind, how he wants to, you can say, raise Rosie to the heights of, you can say, popularity, that she becomes a popular dancer, and when she will gain popularity, then he will also get, you can say, money, and slowly and gradually, you can say, his mind, it is not, you can say, full of, you can say, peace, or he is not able to control his senses, we should say,
Mm.
and he becomes materialistic, and he goes to the extent of, you can say, the forgery, and by the signature of Rosie, how he's trying to get the money of, you can say, Rosie, and all these things, and the reality, when the reality is exposed, then you can say Rosie, she's also, you can say, repentant on his decision, that why she left, you can say, Marco, and
Yeah.
as we have talked, that for the Indian women, the, you can say, house of their husband, it is the real world where they would like to die, and that is what, you can say, Rosie also, you can say, understands after, you can say, all these incidents. So this materialism, it is the, you can say, root cause of the evils in human beings right from the beginning. But the thing is that how we control our senses, how
Yeah.
we control our temptations, and
Exactly.
Rose, Raju is not able to, you can say, control his temptations or senses, and that's why he suffers.
Yes. That's the answer. So
Hmm.
my first question is the notion of collective consciousness in Indian literature.
Yes, sir.
Yes. I need answer, sir.
Collective consciousness is when we are going through these, you can say, mythical stories, and
Mhm.
we just get the image of, we can say, those figures in our mind, the mind picture, the images, and how you can say, on the basis of, you can say, their attributes, or their you can say, their uh, qualities that they embodied in the past,
Yes.
we also, you can say, try to, you can say, uh, follow the same in our life, and
But sir,
how
yes, sir.
how you
You
can
need to
say.
be very brief. So I think your question is answered. Thanks a lot.
Even
Much
I have a question, ma'am.
gratitude, Dr. Dinesh Kumar. We are going to stay on, all the participants. We are going to
No,
begin
sir.
with the
Yes,
next session, please. Right?
okay, ma'am.
Our
Okay.
resource person of the next session has already joined. I hope all your queries are answered. Otherwise, you can put up your queries in the message box. And sir will also share his email address in the message box. You can write to
Yes,
him.
yes, yes.
And often many of
Okay.
our queries, they get answered if we keep on pursuing the research in that direction, right? So it is
Yes,
not
ma'am.
a
Thank you, ma'am.
class which will continue and continue. His lecture already was very informative.
Yeah.
So I
Surely.
hope you are okay with it. And should we invite the next speaker, our next resource person? Yes, organizers, Dr. Gurpreet. Our next resource person is Dr. Ifoma Ezene Odine. She's a senior lecturer in the Department of English Language and Literature, Namdi Ezekwe University, Avaka, where she graduated with first class honors in 2006. Odine, she is the pioneer first class honors graduate of the department. and she has master's degree in literature in 2014 and a doctoral degree in 2019 from the from the same very department. She studied at Renmin University, Beijing, China in 2008 to 2009. She also has a master's degree in Chinese philosophy from Xiamen University, China in 2012. Her area of specialization are creative writing, gender studies, comparative literature, and post-colonial literatures. Currently, she is a senior lecturer on dual appointments in the Department of Chinese Studies and English Language and Literature of both, the mentioned universities. And she has published many articles, poems, and novels. Pain in the Neck, which is published in 2018, is her debut novel. It is about the African China scenario, and her second novel is a sequel to her debut. These are all diasporic novels. So we welcome you, madam, here, and we would like to be enlightened by your thought process on the contemporary trends in English literature and language. And again, one of my scholars, Sabah, she is doing research on Chimamanda's work. So it would be her pleasure to listen to you and to be enlightened, as well as all of us. We look forward to listen to you, madam, and I welcome you from the bottom of my heart. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's really nice being on this conference today.
You have
I really, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear
Yes,
me?
ma'am, you're audible.
Okay. Okay. Actually, this the topic I'm going to talk about right now is very, very complex, but I'm going to handle it in such a way that it will be easy for me and others will also comprehend my points. We all have to understand one fact, that the world, we're living in a very digital world. And then the emergence of the digital world made me to think something on looking at emerging trends, or what we can call contemporary trends, and we can also call new trends in language learning and literature. Specifically because you cannot talk about literature without talking about language. My area of specialization is mostly in literature. I explore literatures. In literary studies, I look into gender studies, post-colonial literatures, creative writing, comparative literatures. I really enjoy them a lot. But because of the emergence of the digital world, which we find ourselves, I began to think about how we are going to utilize the emergence of digital technology. And I say this is becoming very rapid, and both the young, the old are keen into this digital perspective. Then I said, and looking at emerging trends in language and literature, we have to understand that digital technology bridges a gap, between humanistic disciplines, sciences, and other aspects. And when we talk about, we must actually accept the fact that for those of us in humanistic disciplines, we actually need a kind of newness in our research. And then I have to boldly say that this digital digital space had already created this new avenue for us to explore what literature offers and what language could offer in relation to what I call social networking. But before we try to understand this new the emergence or a new trends in language and literature, we must take into consideration the fact that life learning is an important aspect of life. And for those of us who had been very traditional in our teaching, like lecturers who are very traditional in their teaching, you find that in contemporary times, we must, or you must actually seek one thing. You must seek to learn. You must seek to adapt to these new trends in terms of the digital space that have been made available for us to actually explicate literary experiences, or actually to improve our language learning skills in connection to other people or people in other parts of the world. Now, I say, when we talk about contemporary or emerging trends in language and literature, learning is an important aspect of life that must be, or that should be, very interesting for it to be enjoyed. So when we talk of learning, you must actually make it interesting for you to enjoy it. And the same thing applies to the digital space. It is a space that is very complex, a space that needs your attention, a space that you can actually learn both positive and the negative. But the most important thing is that in every as a trend, you must actually define a path that you must take. But for you to be well accepted in society, or for you to actually go along with the psychological, impact in society in terms of behavioral patterns, in terms of educational patterns, in terms of interactive pattern, I say you must actually learn to, find a space in the digital, world. Okay, now I said learning must be beyond having what I call traditional knowledge of teaching. It must be made with new skills and ideas that draw on current trends or experiences, situations that influence life directly. Basically, we can say that there is no denying the fact that new trends, both in teaching language, learning language, or comprehending language, and literature. So I said these facts actually aid in what I call brain training. So when you find yourself in the digital world, you must actually venture into what I call the digital space, and engaging yourselves in there in all this. It's in brain training. It helps you to actually train your psyche. It actually helps you to see other patterns of behavior in terms of psychological behavior, physical behavior of others through within the digital space, that spaces or space that have been created. So we say in language, digital space is very important. Through digital technology that have been made available to us, we can look at what we call have a better view of what they call language patterns in terms of pronunciation, in terms of meanings, in terms of usage, as well as trying to create a kind of flexibility in comprehending new and imaginative ideas in literature. Therefore, it is important to say that learning requires being open to new ideas. In Nigeria, we are trying to open up ourselves as lecturers to the digital space. But there are politics that we actually must, or we are trying to imbibe in order to embrace the digital space. And just like I said, this is a new trend that is very complex, and that in the nearest future, this is not going to, it's going to be more complex. And that is why we must actually pay attention to this new trend, because many things from the literary perspective, from the language perspective, literary studies are actually moving from the traditional pattern to the digital pattern. And that is why we cannot do without this. The early embrace this aspect is better for us. And for us in the humanistic disciplines, we actually have to embrace it because it gives us a kind of an age to have a kind of general interactive perspectives that will help us comprehend the world, and then link and have a kind of social networking that will aid us in understanding what the world of language and literature is all about from academic perspectives. Now, I said for us to actually find ourselves to explore the digital space, there are certain qualities that we must actually have. Number one, I say we are instructors, we are teachers. I say as an instructor or teacher, we must be open to new ideas in order to be more knowledgeable about the ideas that have been presented in digital space. And again, I say, one of the qualities again is we must be able to connect with other instructors online. So when we talk of digital space, we talk of internet connections, we talk of online connections. And when we talk of online connections, we say we have minute ones, micro ones like Facebook, TikTok, um, LinkedIn. There are many of them. There are many mobile applications that are thriving in Nigeria, America, UK, all over the world. So different cultural contexts also have their own mobile application. So these are very universal, but very specific to individual, to different social contexts. So, but the most important thing is that there must be what we call connection with other instructors, with other people of like minds or online in the field that you are trying to actually explore. So um this gives you an aid, because I say in this digital world there is always a group, there is always a species or different species of individuals in terms of knowledge seeking, in terms of patterns of thoughts, in terms of academic issues or studies to be discussed. So the digital world gives you a kind of brings you to limelight, seek a group that might sharpen your mental horizon in trying to comprehend the area that you're interested in studying. That is why, for those of us in language, we can connect to instructors that are very, passionate about language learning, passionate about behavioral, cognitive, first in language pattern or learning. These are new ideas. So it gives you a kind of in TikTok you can actually find patterns that will help you to explicate realities in relation to virtual realities. All these things are very important. So in trying to, you must assimilate the quality of having a kind of social network in terms of connecting to online in the field. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Ma'am, you are
Okay.
audible, but your voice
Thank you.
echoes.
Oh,
Ma'am, your
okay.
voice is
Okay. It's
not
all right.
clear,
It's all
ma'am.
right. Is that clear? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we can hear you,
You're
ma'am.
audible.
Is it
Yes.
okay?
Voice is clear, but we
Okay.
should keep our mics
Okay.
off
That's
actually.
nice. That's nice. Okay. That's nice. Okay. Okay. I was actually talking about politics that will help us to embrace new trends or contemporary trends. And I was talking about social networking in terms of visibility online, connecting to specific groups of our interest. And I said this is very important for academics. It is important that we attend online, just like what we are doing. We attend online workshops, conferences, both that could be very physical and that also could have online visibility. And this is one of the qualities, that we help us to actually comprehend. And then we look at your ability to have what we call to hype your psyche in terms of assimilating new ideas for teaching. And then you have to use these new ideas that you've adopted. You can use it as correction, we have correction tools that will also help you to do that. But in the aspect, when I talk about new trends in language and literature, remember, we are not just trying to explicate this topic in terms of emerging trends in language and literature, but we are trying to look at the prospects and challenges of these, new new trends. So when I talk of new trends, my interest right now is on the digital space because that is what is trending to me. Every issue that we have to explicate in academic, studies, in academic exploration, is actually housed within what I call the digital space. And that is why, because the digital space, helps us in social networking, just like we are doing now. I am far away in Nigeria, you are in India, people are in different parts of the world. You see, there is what we call social connection is what is networking is what is happening. And we are learning from each other based on the perspectives we are trying to, put forward on the table. On the table. So now, I will simply say that, there is no doubt in language and literature that in language and literature there are new trends that aid teaching and learning. And these new trends are strongly connected to digital technology. And that is why as we say that social media platforms, new technology laced with virtual, perspectives or reality are very important. And that is why in
Sorry for the disturbance, ma'am. You can continue now.
It's very embarrassing. Everybody, please keep your mics off. Let us listen to the lecture carefully.
Okay, are you listening?
Yes, ma'am. You can go on.
Okay, it's very important that participants should understand this, that when an election is going on, they should actually, pay attention and avoid things that can actually destroy the presenter. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay. 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 Thank you. Uh, okay. So I was trying to, I'll say the comments. So it's okay. It's okay. That is live. That is live. Okay. That is live. Okay. So when I was still trying to say that when we talk about emerging trends, we also have to consider what we call the prospects and the challenges. And these are very important. Just what happened now is part of the challenges, but there's nevertheless they are, very important that we also continue. Now, in language, we must understand that within the digital spaces, we try to learn new things or to understand new things. But one thing is that the potential impact of emerging trends in the form of written English, um, through random sampling had already has some implications that could be positive and that could be negative. And then based on what we call social media convention, which is very common among students in terms of expressions, in terms of written conversation, we have to understand that the social media, um, it has already given us the platform of expression, but at the same time, it has done something, a kind of harm, because we have what we call the autocorrect and other applications that aid our written English. So you find that there is a kind of deviation from in terms of performance of students or individuals in written English, as people are not able to differentiate what we call appropriateness of variety in terms of word expression. So the digital space is helping us to connect more to people's ideology. It's helping us in language expression to learn more language patterns. It's helping us to actually, delve into issues of language. But at the same time, something is there is a negative impact on that, and this is basically on what we call the written part of language, because the autocorrect and other applications in the digital space had already affected both the students and maybe say many people have already affected the performance in written language, that we actually are not so sometimes not so acquainted with the right way of writing in terms of a given word. That is why in the contemporary time teaching pattern, we encourage teachers of language to actually combine what we call the traditional standard of teaching, making sure that students or individuals go back to actually see what the dictionary says about this, and then know the correct spellings of this word, and then try to actually imbibe them, not just using the digital apps, in writing, in correcting what they have already written. So there should be a combination of the traditional pattern of writing and formal writing, kind of teaching alongside the digital, technology or equipments that are seen in apps. Now, when we talk of language learning, new trends in language learning, we say that social media platforms are very important. They speed up the rate of reading and writing. We cannot deny this. The speed up the rate of reading and writing, and this in turn also affects the ability to know the right spellings, just like I said. Therefore, we say that constant use of the digital technology is good. It opens you up to different societies, to different contexts, to different ideologies. But one thing is very important. It also has its negative impacts. People are beginning to lack what we call the mastery of spellings, mastery of punctuations, and mastery of tenses as a result of social media influence. And there is also, from language perspective, there is also a new cropping damaging ones that you find that most people use the autocorrect applications or on their devices to check wrong spellings without efforts to learn the proper way. These things, digital space offers us interesting pattern of using these applications. Or sometimes our maybe creative ingenuity becomes too low for us to actually see that these things cannot be actually imbibed. And again, when we talk about emerging trends in language in connection to social media stuffs, we can say this has led to the falling standard in the use of English, especially the written language, the written part of English among people. Mostly when you look at social media from Nigerian perspective, you will see there are modification of words for easy communication among social language learners. Although English is our lingua franca, but you see among use of today, you see a kind of modification in the use of words, and this also affect their written English, which is not actually good for personal growth and for societal in terms of official use of this language, this of written parts. And then we are talking about language pattern, language. We have to look at literature. There are new trends in literature is also connected to what I called the digital space. In contemporary, that we said in literature, there are emerging trends and genres like microfiction, flash fiction, word novels, a few word novels, like it could be 6 word novels. We have what we call Facebook fiction, we have flash fiction, we have Twitter fiction, all these, and also we have graphic novels. These are all contemporary, new trends that have emerged in the digital space. But we are glad that these are emerging because our mobile devices and other digital technological, appliances or applications are there to help us. But in as much as we are actually embracing this new trend, we must understand that all these, are could be positive and they could be negative. We said all these make depiction of experiences from the literary studies perspective, easy, for us to read and actually see the complexity of human experiences. They make life, in terms of depiction of experiences, easy. It makes these experiences to go viral. We are able. We say that literature is a mirror up to nature. And in reading literary works, whether it is in the digital space or in the traditional form, in the print text, you said they help us to, explore varied experiences of life that we as passive recipients are not, able to live in the real world. So when you talk about literature, new trends in literature, digital space had already given us a kind of an age in depiction of experiences, making it giving us a kind of easy ground to see what experiences in different parts of the world are like. And then we are able to, ascertain or able to assimilate ideologies from different writers. Also, we are able to see patterns of thoughts in terms of aesthetic, the aesthetic or poetics in a given literary work or different literary works. So we are able to see different thematic factors that have been preoccupation that have been explored by different writers. And then we are able, through digital space, through the literature in digital space, that's why that's when I come to what I call digital literature. Because when you have different genres like microfiction, a few word novels, Twitter fiction, graphic, which we can collectively call this digital literature. So in essence, we can study literary perspectives, literary ideologies in the digital space. And then we refer to this study as digital literature. So since we are able to actually delve into the world of literature by reading fictitious depiction of experiences in the digital space, we are able to see what these things are like. We are able to see how which have been used by different language. That's what we call the aspects of styles in literary studies. We see the styles of different writers. Then we see, the purview or the ideology in documented experiences that are fictional but have world. So, when we talk of literature, we say literature documents experiences. But these experiences have what we call fictional influences. You cannot pin down the stories in as much as these experiences are depicted. But you cannot pin down the story to a particular individual because the writers sometimes do not make use of real settings. Make use of real characters were imagined by different literary artists or different digital, literary artists. So they were meant for us to, for them to educate individuals or readers or their audiences. They were meant to entertain them. They were meant to actually, so that is why we say the digital space is very powerful because it influences, it's very effective, it influences ideology. And it helps people to actually, accept or see the variety and of human experiences. But one thing, when we talk of literature in the digital space, or what we call digital literature, we will find out that the language issue is also there. Because you cannot tell me that literature which tries essays for people, to comprehend the patterns of thoughts of a given of different individuals in different social contexts. If you tell me that a field language could actually be used, like to round off or to experiences, we say, although we are thriving in a world of creativity, we acknowledge that. And these, in terms of few words novel or theater, they could be very very interesting and very catchy in terms of the aesthetic patterns, in terms of trying to summarize all issues in within a few using a few sentences or a few words. You find out that it still boils down to the use of language. Because to me, digital space, might create graphic novels or graphic perspectives, but you find out that it needs adequate interpretation for this to be understood. Sometimes these graphic perspectives might not be so clear, but the most important thing is that it is a new creation that makes human to think, that makes those that people who are interested in that particular area of study, to actually think deep about these presentations. But the most important thing is that language use is also very effective in that. Language use is affected because in all of this, the use of language might make us to draw back from comprehending some of perspectives that might help people who are very, who are not so acquainted with that pattern of writing, to actually appreciate what has been done. But the most important thing is for us to understand that just like it has prospects in projecting aspects of aesthetic aspects of writing in the digital world, from the aspect of digital literature, we must understand that language use is affected because we tend to understand these new perspectives of writing using digital technology, but we tend to forget that men are created to use language. So what we have to do to break this gap is that although in terms of presenting some of these few words novel or theater fiction, we tend to lack our ability to use grammar properly. So we can see from Facebook perspective, from Twitter perspective, from TikTok perspective, you find out that grammar has lost its value. But that notwithstanding, we must actually try to see how we can bring together this concept, the traditional concept of learning the proper language use, and how we are going to actually infuse them in digital literature. This is very important. And the fact is that this generation is submerged with myriads of word expression, varied concepts, ideologies that are woven around digital technology. We must accept that, and we cannot do anything about that. But no doubt, we can say that people are becoming lazy towards reading print text in form of novels or text on various subjects. Many people, we are becoming lazy. So that's why most times we use our mobile apps, to actually read novels, accessibility. One thing about the digital technology is that it gives us what I call makes these literary works accessible to us. But in as much as it's making it accessible, we have to also consider the fact that in most developing countries that the use of internet is still a kind of challenge. So to them, the digital world is somehow a kind of bizarre or very expensive venture to thrive in, because they need good mobile Android or mobile phones for them to actually occupy this digital space. So in as much as we say that the digital space in literature, what we call digital literature, gives us the advantage of having accessibility to the world, we can understand that we can simply understand that it creates a kind of challenge to those who are less privileged, to those who do not have resources actually to fund themselves to getting mobile phones that could help them. And then when we talk about getting mobile phones, we also have to think about the fact that It's not all about getting mobile phones. They need data for them to recharge their phones and then have access to this to the digital literature. So if you do not have Android phones or other digital technology or other devices, digital devices that would aid you to actually delve into the digital literature, it becomes another challenge. So we can say, in as much as we say that online versions are mostly preferred by many youths. For example, my students, I'm a lecturer, and in teaching literature, I try to connect the digital literature with the traditional. Hello? Is there any problem? Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Hello?
Yes,
You're
ma'am. Yes,
audible,
ma'am. We
ma'am.
can hear you.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am,
okay.
you're audible.
In the okay. Okay. I want to. I know so many people might be saying this topic, but I found this topic very interesting because it brings our reality to us, and it is very important that we talk about this because in the academic world, people are beginning to tilt towards error in usage, become lazy because of the emerging trends, and then people somehow feel outdated in terms of those in humanistic studies. Too much explication of literary works. Are making people, say, in fact, every day, people from different parts of the world, they tell us, they ask certain questions. Those people in literature, what do you explore except, what have been fictionally, what have been depicted? These things are not real. But I make an argument that has to do with new trends. You cannot, just like I said, you cannot divert literature from society. To me, I say that without literature, there is no society. And without society, there is no literature. But my interest in this topic is to see how we can marry language learning and literature from digital perspective with the traditional form. You see, these things are very important. I was talking about marrying me as a lecturer. I try doing something to bring a kind of newness in what I teach. Yes, my students are so at home with technological devices to the extent that they enjoy reading online versions to traditional ones. So the first thing they ask me, "Oh, Doc, we have to, do we go to the online version?" But you know what I do? I said, no, you need to go back to the traditional version because it helps you to feel the text the way it is. So there is a joy that actually comes with feeling the text that have been printed. And there is also a need for us to have the online version, which is very accessible. In a sense, you see, opportunities and time, social context could also help us to use both at different times, because you could be in the bus and then make use of the online version. It will aid you, it will help you. And there is a kind of feeling that you have when you use the print text, when you have a physical text on your palms. You feel submerged in the world that the literary artists had already presented. And that is why I say, for those of us in the literary world that actually explicate literary studies, it becomes important for us to start moving away, not totally away, and not so totally away, to find a newness that could match what I call, that could match those in science disciplines. Scientists are always finding new ways of doing things, new ways of solving life problems. We can also actually key into this. And that is where the digital space comes in. The digital space helps us to explicate these patterns. Remember I said that literature is not diverse from society. Literature helps us to understand society. Therefore, if there is no literature, there is no society. And if there is no society, there is no literature. Therefore, I can say that literature and society work pari passu. For those of us in the literary studies, it becomes important for us to take the digital literature very important, because most of our students, most people are tilting towards digital space. And then we are, the more we are advanced in in years, in period, in different perspectives, it becomes more complex. Then, for us in humanistic studies, I'm asking, how do we actually explore the space? And I said, from the perspective of digital literature, we can explore the space. We can look at experiences that have been depicted. These experiences are already depicted. They could be real life experiences, but they could be analyzed in relation, to depicted works. And then when we talk about depicted works in terms of novels that have been written, in terms of poems that have been written, remember, most of these experiences were borrowed from the real world. They were borrowed from experiences of people. And these experiences have been fictionalized using fictional characters that are unreal. But the most important thing is that there is what we call social consciousness. In the emerging trend in digital space, every space tries to create what we call social consciousness. And social consciousness is very important. In literary studies, we create social context and consciousness using different patterns, ideologies that are explicated using theories or approaches. So now, from social media perspective, you find that most of these experiences have been explicated. But the newness you are bringing could be linked to social media patterns like TikTok. You see how TikTok could actually relate to real life experiences that are connected to what an author had been depicted. Now you say, how could, perspectives of maybe you talk about what we call viral internet culture. Viral internet culture could also be reduplicated in literary pieces. How do we do that? Because of the rise in what we call popularity of social media, we began to interpret experiences from these perspectives. You find that you borrow experiences that have been depicted, thought patterns for those in language studies. You find out that you begin to research on thought patterns of maybe there could be celebrities, there could be cultural perspectives in relation to language studies or ideology in language use in relation to a given cultural context. And that way, you are thriving in digital space and you are trying to educate people in the digital space. So now, two things are being done. You are marrying the traditional method, for reading out experiences that have been depicted with good background, and you are thriving. You are also borrowing from people's experiences, from cultural perspectives, from depiction or reenaction that have been, captured on social media. But in doing this, we must understand that issues are divided and online, phones are accessed without difficulties. Then since the phone, is accessed without difficulties, it is a closed device that must be accepted. People, we must learn to, allow readers. It's like our phone. It helps to, within our closets, it helps to, allow readers to have accessibility to what you have written, to, both the online books, are also what I call valuable sources for learning. But I still maintain, as much as we are trying to thrive in the digital space, we must also recognize these challenges or certain challenges or a challenge. For this generation, I can say that the people lack the tenacity or will to read lengthy stories. You see, for those of us in literary studies, most students, majority of my students lack what I call the tenacity or inner will to read lengthy stories. So you see them thriving more to look for short stories on different topics, on different ideologies, that they could flip through and then summarize. But all the same, these things are good. The picture of experiences are good in short forms, microfictions, all this, social media platforms are good. But they, just like I pointed out, they also come with their challenges. And one thing again, one of the challenges is this. People lack, there is what we call this lack of patience that has given rise to this microfiction, flash fiction, using a few words in depicting emotion. But to me, these things are good. They have aesthetic implications that are, brainstorming, that aid, brain training or brain creativity. They are very good, but there is still a negative impact to that, and I feel that negative impact towards language. Language use is drastically reducing. Good use of grammar, good use of my short forms in language use is actually affecting, for my students, is actually affecting them. Because in most of examination scripts I marked, I found out that there was an unconscious use of, short forms of writing, inability to use proper, grammar in writing. All these things are as a result of, too much immersion in the digital space. So for me, everything that has a kind of advantage also has a disadvantage. And to me, lack of good use of grammar, is a huge disadvantage, because what the physical text does to us in terms of novels, in terms of it helps us to read less experiences. It exposes us to vocabulary that will help us to enrich our thought patterns. So as we read some of these print texts that have varied complexities of human experiences, we are able to assimilate new words. We're able to see how these words are really actually used and how they pattern our thoughts. And again, when we talk about the negative or challenges of digital world, you find that editing, lack of editing is actually thriving, because people have tenacity or the zeal to just put anything up in social media, but they do not edit some of the things they have already written. And then there are people who might be ignorant. There are people who might be ignorant about what the experiences that have been depicted without having good knowledge of grammar, use of language in terms of grammar and stability of context in terms of what have been written. But this lack of editing, makes people to assimilate some of these, language patterns that might not be real. So as we actually encourage people to actually explore fictional experiences online, we must take into cognizance that there are grammatical errors that might be repeated because these words are very individualistic and they have not been actually, fully edited. So you find out that the editing is also part of the challenges, because social media is speaking towards individualism, and then people are becoming socially active in terms of connection, networking, in terms of ideology, and then people are looking for popularity. So popularity is good, but it has its negative impact. Negative impact is that you become a master of your own without being adequately, knowledgeable. You might not be, an individual might not be knowledgeable about a given, That is why I encourage academics to be very active in terms of digital space, to marry the print text, the literary text, in terms of novels in a traditional way with the digital space, so that we will make a kind of impact that will help those who are, in quotes, uneducated in the pattern that we are striving, for them to learn, the right pattern, the right, to encourage a kind of humanistic research in the academic world and reality. So I would have said more, but I am actually looking at time, for this. This is an interesting topic that is very broad, and permit me to say that the digital technology has influenced the reading pattern of our youth in terms of ideology, in terms of patterns of reading, in terms of basically I would say that people spend good time in the digital space reading books than they spend, in privately reading text. So because there is a kind of accessibility, that makes people to go online often, that they no longer check the dictionaries for meanings of words and spellings. This is becoming somehow bizarre. It's a bizarre form, but it is a thriving form that has come to stay. So I encourage everyone to be thoughtful about exploring the digital space and to actually, open up, new avenues in the digital space that will help them to research more and that will help them to create a kind of creativity in their areas of studies for those in language and literature, looking at some areas in cultural context with using TikTok, social media, Facebook, even different mobile applications, invite them as you are teaching, as you are learning, with a traditional method. So you can actually make a kind of impact in society. Thank you so much. I really have to stop here. Thank you. Thank you. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. We can
Hello,
hear you.
hello. Yeah, it is indeed a very wonderful session, and the message box is flooded with question and praises. So I believe we should not be any intrusion between you and the scholars who have the queries. I hope I'm clearly visible. I'm clearly audible. Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
you are.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I proceed further
Yeah.
and invite the scholars to ask their queries because they have really liked your deliberations on the topic. If you can yourself open the message box and see the amount of praises and how they have found your session to be very enriching. Much gratitude, and we proceed further to the scholars to ask their queries, please.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Can I please?
Okay.
Yeah, please. Please carry
Thank-
on. Please carry on.
Thank you
Good
so much for the
afternoon.
very enriching session. I just wanted to ask you, ma'am, the digital media has no boundaries, but cultures have so many boundaries. So how do we delineate the real and the digital boundaries? Am I audible, ma'am?
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're very odd. So when you talk about the digital is like the world. The digital space is like the physical world we found ourselves. For example, bridges a gap between you and I. Like I'm in Nigeria, you are in India, right? One thing is that there's what we call in digital space. There are different, applications. There are in social media. There are different, forms. What you have to do is that it doesn't have boundary, but it still has boundary. You look for people of like mind. You look for academics that are interested in it's what we call an algorithm. Like in TikTok perspective, you can use algorithm to actually capture those who are interested in your areas of study. So that is why your areas of study actually create a space or a boundary for you. So you look for those who are actually looking at your ideology, your perspective, your thought processes, and then you connect with them. This is what we call in digital space. This is what in digital space. This is what we call social networking. So from language perspective, you can look for people who are interested. Language is who are interested in any ideology connected to language learning, language pattern, cognitive pattern. All these things are very important. So the digital space is like the real world we live in. We connect to people we are interested in. We connect to people whose ideologies have already influenced us. We connect to issues that we think that are very beneficial to us. So it doesn't create boundary, but you can create boundary on the space, on the digital space. So your boundary from an academic perspective depends on what you are researching on. So what you are
Thank you so much.
researching
Thank
on
you so
already
much.
creates a boundary. For those of us in gender studies, if you okay.
Madam, digital humanities is a very upcoming area. Can you please have your email address so that in case we have any more queries, we can write to you?
Okay. Okay, that would be nice. That would be nice. That would be nice. Okay, I have just sent my.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much. Thank you so much,
I've
ma'am.
done that. I've sent my email.
Thank you so much.
You're
Good
welcome.
good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Ma'am, can I ask a question?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an
Yeah,
enlightening
you're
and
free. You're free.
insightful session. Thank you once again, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, I want to know, you talked about this as we are talking about the challenges. So do you think that we have this challenge with us that no doubt earlier when you used to read or when anybody used to write, they used to think whether it will get published, is it of some standard or not. But now that we are able to write and we're able to publish it and we get wide publicity through different social media platforms. So I feel that the type of quality actually is, in a way, it's my observation, it's in a way declining. And no doubt there are modern techniques of plagiarism and other things. There is very, very good quality to literature. But I think every Tom, Dick, and Harry is now trying to write. And even if, and I feel that it's a challenge that literature is facing. I'm your take on it. Thank you.
Okay, this is an interesting question that you really need to understand something about life. And life offers us both negative and positive. And that's why definitely let me be very specific. In most developing countries or in most countries that are having challenges, we find out that there is what we call death of digital space. But that notwithstanding, you made mention of people writing so much. Digital space, we must actually applaud, the positive impact of digital space because it has, widened our mental horizon of knowing, experiences of people and ideologies of people, right? It has, brought to the forefront, what the world is all about without being to a distant part of the world. Nevertheless, we have to acknowledge, just like you say, or you asked, the challenges. Mostly people, you find that most academics do not, from the developing world, do not actually make use of the digital space. They might be knowledgeable, but they lack the tenacity of or what we call the moral will for them to occupy the space. And you know what happens when people who have an intellectual ingenuity do not occupy space to protect that space from the perspective or perspectives of their studies. There tends to be a kind of influx of what is negative. And that is exactly what is happening. Most people who could write are afraid of writing. Then those people who could not write are not afraid of writing because they seek for popularity. And one thing that is actually, very dangerous, a dangerous trend that is going on is that everybody wants to be known. But what are people doing? I mean, people who have this creative ingenuity, you might not have money, but it has given us the space to actually thrive in presenting what we have. So you find that we cannot do anything about it. We have to take the bull by the horn for people who think that they have skills in writing. And they are very good in language. In grammar, in promoting English, in promoting English. They should come up and occupy the space. When you occupy the space, you project in your discussions, try to project, these challenges. And But again, we cannot exonerate the problem of poor. Oh my God.
Neha ma'am, please mute your mic. Neha ma'am, please mute your mic.
So this is digital writing of another kind.
Oh my God.
Digital writing of another kind.
Yeah. What we have to accept is, yeah, it is. These are the challenges too. These are the challenges, but we have to, because we are humans. Sometimes we do something without even knowing that we have done that. So that this is not new. It's part of the challenges we are facing. So a kind of discussion within a discussion, and other discussions that are going. But these are the challenges, but we also have to embrace them, forgive, and then look forward to what we are doing. So it's also part of them. So what we do is, for those of us who are really good, who are good or interested in writing and know the ethics of writing, in terms of proofreading and language use, in terms of grammar, we really need to take the bull by the horn. We project, our ideologies and try to make people aware of these challenges when we write. So when we leave it for those who could not write, you find out that there will be an increase in negative tendencies, and this will tend to affect learning in the nearest future in the digital space. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam, very informative section, madam. For this, my question is, the repeating the digital technology for accept, ASPECET, acceptance. So what are the, madam, for the digital space?
Oh, I didn't get the question clearly. Please, could you, what are you saying? I didn't get the
digital technology in space.
29 है.
And after that, what are the accepts, aspirants? Digital technology spaces and aspirations. What are the aspirations?
Just a second,
For
Dr.
the
Meenakshi, please put your mic off.
Madam, once again, madam, the aspiration of digital technology and spaces. So what are the aspirants?
Samanayak, we didn't get your question clearly.
It's still not clear. I didn't get you. Sorry.
Madam, describe about the digital technology accepts along with the digital spaces. I don't know idea. That's why I asked, madam.
Is it clear to anyone here? Like my connection is little broken. The speech is little broken. Samanayak, एक बारी repeat करो, दोबारा से repeat करो. आप क्या पूछना चाह रहे हो?
Okay, are you trying?
Madam explained so many times.
Are you trying to say that digital space is a new area?
Digital space along with the digital technology. Yes, ma'am. But I can't understood. That is the main cause, madam.
Okay,
I think that he's trying to ask the difference between digital space and
okay,
digital technology.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know idea. Digital space.
Technology.
Yes.
Technology. When you talk of technology,
not technology, madam.
When you talk of technology, you cannot talk of technology without talking about technological differences.
Yes, ma'am. Technological differences.
Digital technology.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I'm trying to explain something. You cannot talk about digital technology. Digital technology, when you talk of digital technology, talking about digital devices. The digital devices actually, digital technology helps you. You make use of digital devices to explore digital spaces. Now, within the digital spaces, you'll find out that there are different apps that will help you to actually, in terms of language learning, that will, in different social contexts, there are different, there are many of them. There are different apps that will help you to actually do that. Now, we also talk of social media. When you talk of TikTok, it's a different social media, a digital space that will help you. TikTok is a digital space that will help you. Facebook is a digital space that will help you. Are you there? And there are numerous applications millennials and Gen Zers. There are many applications that will help you. So when you talk about digital space, it is varied. It could be in form of applications that have been created for language learning. Then it could be the one that is very popular. It could be TikTok. It is a digital space that has its own features that can be explicated. When you talk of Twitter, it is a digital space that anybody can occupy. The same thing with Facebook. So it depends on where the space you want to venture in. Digital space is very varied. It's very complex. So according to your region, according to social context, you can actually explore that. Yes. So it is varied. You can actually make more research on that and then see, but you can choose one. You can even choose many of them to actually explore your knowledge and then make it view. And one thing about the digital space is that they are connected to each other. You can connect from TikTok to Facebook, then LinkedIn. You can actually repost, you can share. You see the connection. So if you want the popularity, for people to understand what you mean, you said digital space, are varied and complex, or still they share a kind of commonality that can connect people from other spaces to another space. Are you there?
Madam,
Is it okay?
Yes, madam. Okay, madam. I understood digital space. For the digital technology, madam?
Digital space is powered by digital technology. How can digital space be without the usage of digital technology? So it was quite an invigorating session, Dr. Ifyoma.
Okay.
You set the house on fire with such a brilliant talk, and digital technology itself, it is a text now. The digital space has become a text in today's time. Much gratitude. And now I would like to invite Professor Komal. Thank you so much. We love to have you here and see much of your sessions in our future projects too. And I would invite Professor Komal for the official vote of thanks.
Okay.
So India made you happy. India made you happy. Here are many takers for your ideas. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for inviting me. On behalf of the Department of English, Shri Guru Tegh Bahadur Khalsa College, Shri Nandpur Sahib, Punjab, India, I would like to thank our speaker, Dr. Dinesh Kumar, and Dr. Ifyoma Odine for a wonderfully interactive session, and our moderator, Dr. Manjinder Kaur Raj, for taking out time from their busy schedule to grace the event. Thank you so much, ma'am. A special thanks to Dr. Jasveer Singh, Principal of Shri Guru Tegh Bahadur Khalsa College, Nagpur Sahib, and Dr. Gurpreet Kaur, Head of PG Department of English, for their support and guidance. Thank you all, the participants, for your active participation. Have a nice day. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.